Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I'm here with Jan from the RMAI, or the Receivables Management Association International, one of the premier trade associations for the receivables management and debt collection spaces. How are you doing today, Jan?
Great, thanks. How are you?
Cannot complain. For those viewers that are unfamiliar with the RMAI, can you tell us a little bit about the organization and what you do there?
Sure, I'm the executive director of RMAI. Actually, I started here in 2011, so I just had my 10-year anniversary. When I started, it was DBA International, which was often is probably a more familiar phrase, but I think RMAI is now getting as well known as DBA. When I first started, we actually were managed by an association management company on the East Coast, and didn't have dedicated staff to service our members. We were mostly known at that time for our annual conference in Las Vegas in February, and we're just starting to dabble into the advocacy work. So since I started, we have opened up an office in Sacramento. We have 8 dedicated staff members working on behalf of RMAI. And we've really expanded the member benefits and the services and the scope of the association.
Excellent. For those of you that are unfamiliar, I think it's only fair to disclose that I am currently the president-elect of the Receivables Management Association International and have been an active member for, oh my God, I believe this will be my 15th consecutive annual conference I'll be attending in 2021. And as a member and as a board member, one of the things that I've been proudest about with the association has been our certification program. So I wanted to kind of, Jan, just ask you a few questions as it relates to kind of certification and how certification is used to benefit the members of the association.
Yeah, so we launched certification in 2013. Seems like ages ago, but we're actually just rolling out version 9.0. So it is an ever-evolving program. We launched it because there was not really a clear set of best practices and standards for the industry. And we were working to put a framework together and to, in the eyes of regulators and policymakers, really to sort of legitimize the debt purchasing industry. So we launched it in 2013. I like to say we launched a Ford and built towards a Cadillac, because the first program that we launched was very basic, had, I don't even remember, maybe about 10 different standards. It was only for debt purchasers or debt buyers at the time. And since then, in the 9 versions that it has gone through, it has expanded to now certified collection agencies, law firms, brokers, and affiliates and vendors. And so it's full scope. It pretty much certifies every sort of stakeholder in the industry. And it's become way more robust in the standards and the requirements of the association. For members of RMAI, those that are debt buyers, they're actually required to be certified to maintain their membership, because it's very important for us to say that all of our debt buyer members subscribe and adhere to our best practices and standards that are required. It's also very important for our members to, it's also very important when we go on our advocacy to be able to say that our members adhere to these higher standards. I would say probably the meat or the teeth of the certification is really in the third-party audit. So certified companies are required to pass a third-party audit during their periodically. and those audits come to us, and we can make sure that it's not a financial audit, it is a compliance audit.
Well, I think the certification program itself has been kind of a self-regulatory item that has ultimately been accepted by some of the government regulators in starting to be reviewed or part of their programs. I know as a debt buyer, it's definitely one of the things that I'm looking at in terms of hiring agencies or law firms, or even looking at other debt buyers to do transactions with. So I found it to be incredibly useful from that perspective. But maybe we could talk a little bit about how certification has been used in advocacy and kind of the results that we've seen with that.
Yeah, so ultimately, obviously, RMAI's our goal is that any debt that is sold in the United States goes into the hands of a certified buyer. And in this point, the new charge off, pretty much, I would say 80 to 90% is going into that. We now have quite a few creditors who actually require certification sort of as their first metrics on their RFIs. It's not if you're certified you can buy, but it is one of the requirements. That's helped a lot, and to the point where I think we have between our certified companies and individuals, we have 400 and maybe 30 or 50, 430 entities or people certified. So it is quite expansive. The program was designed to make sure that, or it wasn't designed, but as we were going through the design, we consulted with regulators on various AGs around the United States, the CFPB, the FTC. As a matter of fact, the FTC actually wrote our first data security standard. So we have buy-in from them from the very beginning, and they, every version that it goes through, they receive a copy. Oftentimes they'll comment back and say, I think you can make this standard a little tougher, or I think you're missing a standard in this situation. New York DFS has provided us feedback. So I think, so working with them as partners, they see the certification program as a way to encourage compliance with the laws, obviously, and with a higher standard of law, since most of our standards go above and beyond what is required. And we have a reach that they actually don't have, right? The CFPB can examine and supervise larger participants. They can do stuff on smaller entities, but excuse me. But they can't, but they don't have the reach that we have. And so they look at us as a self-regulating industry via our certification program. So that's extremely helpful. The other thing that we can do is that we can be way more timely than regulators. I mean, just look at the FTCPA that refers to telegrams. We can change our standards much quicker than a regulator can change change the law or their rules. And so it's an ability for us to create standards on emerging trends and things like that. We use it all the time when we are advocating both at the state and the federal level, and talking, and it is a separation of what one would refer to as a good actor or a bad actor. That so they like it.
Definitely makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure I even know what a telegram is. So I love the idea of being able to kind of roll with the punches and stay in top of
the sound of music.
I have a feeling this is, it's going to predate me just a little bit. I mean, I came into this business when fax was just dying. So, a little bit of a break there. So, I think as we talk about advocacy and the value from certification standpoint, maybe it would be helpful to kind of let people know from an advocacy standpoint, what do we do and how important is our advocacy program, right? Because it's always one of those topics that's kind of general, but I feel like we could be a little bit more specific in how we're communicating it to the membership.
Right. So there's nothing more important for RMAI in our mission than to protect and to defend the accounts receivables management industry. I mean, that is who we are and what we do. And so we have very active involvement and engagement on both the federal and the state level. On the federal level, we have retained counsel in DC. And most importantly, our retained counsel is has attorneys from both sides of the aisle. So we are well placed now as we see a shift at the federal level. And that on the federal level moves a lot slower usually than the state level does. So on a federal level, we spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill educating members of Congress on the value of the industry, the role we play in the credit ecosystem. And then, of course, we do advocate on legislation. We tend, our philosophy generally on both the federal and the state level is to find out what the issue is that the person who is sponsoring a bill is trying to solve, and to work with them to find a solution that helps them. I mean, finds a solution for their issue, but doesn't like just put up artificial barriers to the collection of debt. So you'll say, well, we don't like that they did X. Well, we'll say, well, we're going to ban it. So we know banning it is probably not good for the economy or the credit ecosystem. What about if we proposed something like that? So that is generally and that takes a lot of time and a lot of work to actually sit and work with those people rather than just go out and say, we're going to oppose your legislation. So we do that a lot on Capitol Hill. We were very involved in all the stimulus packages. In that regard, we were always monitoring to make sure that some of the egregious proposals that had come out of House Financial Services last year didn't get slipped into the stimulus packages, because those obviously moved relatively quickly. We are extremely active in on the regulatory front, obviously with the CFPB, the FTC, the OCC, the FCC. We're very active. Whenever we're in DC, we have meetings with all of our regulators and talk to them a lot about sort of what's new in certification. We obviously submit comments on all of their on their proposals that affect us and the industry, with their regular speakers at our events, so that they have they learn from us, we learn from them. We have great relationships with Director Kraniger. We are looking forward to working with new Director Chopra. We do have some past experience and some relationship with him, so we won't be starting from ground zero, so he is familiar with us. On the state level, we actually are very active, and already this year we have, I think, like 90 bills that we are following. Today I just saw a bill that's proposed in New York that would put into statute a complete moratorium on debt collection anytime there is an emergency declared. So obviously that will take
every time there's a snowstorm, nobody can ever collect a debt.
I'm not sure. I have not read the details of the bill, but that was the summary, and I shot it off to our state legislative committee, who is very active, dedicated volunteers working on our members' behalf every day. But wow, this one goes a long ways. And so unlike NCBA and ACA, there are sister organizations. We work together on so many things. We don't have state units. So ACA has state units, NCBA has state creditor bar. So we actually run the state legislation out of our headquarters office. And I'm sure many of you know David Reed, who runs and manages that program. We retain lobbyists in the states where we have legislation that we need to have boots on the ground in. And we have Don Maurice as our legal counsel, who is also regularly giving us, analyzing bills and helping to redline things.
Completely understood. Now, between the federal legislative, the state legislative, the AG work, this all sounds like a very expensive proposition. So I think it's also important to ask, so how do we ultimately pay for those efforts?
Right. Well, as you can imagine, government affairs is our largest budget line item. And we pay for it in a variety of manners. First of all, a portion of members' dues goes towards our advocacy effort. The money that we make off of our annual conference goes to support those efforts. And then third, and most importantly, not most importantly, I guess, but very importantly, is our legislative fund. And those are voluntary contributions from our members that directly support our advocacy efforts. They help us pay for our federal counsel, our AG counsel, all of our state lobbyists. And that again is another group of dedicated volunteers who are making calls to members, asking for donations, and we do have tremendous support. But I'm glad you asked, because we're right now wrapping up our winter silent auction. We traditionally had held it at our annual conference, but now that our annual conference has moved to April 12th through the 15th, and we're holding the silent auction as a virtual event, and we have tremendous prizes or items on there. There are still some good values, but don't be on there looking for value. Be on there looking to support the legislative fund, because every dime that we raise through donations or through the silent auctions goes to support our advocacy work.
Well, that all sounds great. For those of you that want to participate in the silent auction, you can visit the new RMAI website at rmaintl.org. And you can find some great information on there about the advocacy programs, about the member benefits, and all the different things that RMAI does. I think you'll find a lot of good information. If you're not currently a member and interested, you can feel free to reach out to myself, and I can connect you with the right people at the RMAI organization. As chair of the membership committee for the last, I want to say, about 6 years now, I'm happy to have a conversation with you about how we add value across the industry. Jan, I really appreciate you taking the time to participate in our little Receivables Roundtable chats here. I think it's always great to hear from somebody of your caliber and with your knowledge and insight into the industry. I kind of personally consider you to be kind of the hub of the information that flows through this industry, because you just have your hand in so many different pieces and parts, and really appreciate all the hard work that you and the RMAI staff put in to make this happen. One other thing I just want to mention about the association is that it is a volunteer association that's managed, obviously by a board of volunteers, and we have a number of different committees that you can participate in that are also all volunteer run. So this really is an organization by the industry for the industry, and I think that there's a lot of value that can be had through participation. So for anybody that has any questions, feel free to reach out, leave comments below. Jan and I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. But until next time, we'll see you soon. Thanks, Jan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.